inside.
Have you ever been pulled over by the police for your driving, or had an interaction with a police officer? Well, you probably thought that they were fairly friendly or service-minded. Now just imagine that same police officer is carrying an AR-15 and driving a military-grade vehicle. Would it make you feel like you were maybe in like a war zone and being oppressed into giving in? That's how America may look in a couple of years if we continue on the path of the police militarization. If the police become too militarized and too unchecked, they may become more aggressive. And with little fear of repercussions, they may start using deadly force to stop even the pettiest of crimes. The police forces around America have been commissioned many vehicles, such as an MRAP, which is a mine-resistant, ambush-protected vehicle. Humvees is a high-mobility, multi-purpose wheeled vehicle, and even some tanks. So, with all of this in mind, why do you think they have this? Many places have this because of this all started in the 60s with the war on drugs. Police forces became more militarized to try and stop drugs, especially in Chicago, where I say a quote by Elizabeth Anova, a public lawyer from Chicago. The Chicago Police Department's unshakable reputation for dishonesty and corruption was first challenged in 1960 when a crescendo of public anger over the police misconduct peaked. Now this means that basically all the people in Chicago agreed that the police, something was wrong with the police force. They were getting too power hungry, or in a way too much, just had too much access and got off too easily. So military equipment has been deployed more recently as well. Because of the 9/11 attacks, there has been the Department of Defense, the 1011 bill, said that decommissioned or surplus military equipment could be used by local law enforcement to try and prevent terrorism and to stop drug offenses. This is a quite drastic measure. For the police forces don't deal with terrorism every day. They don't see that every day. If anything happens, it's usually the National Guard that takes care of it. And a representative from the Department of Defense said that the he's in charge, his name is Alan Estevez, is in charge of logistics, technology, and development at the Department of Defense. He says that examples of controlled property being items that the Department of Defense gives to the police forces are 92,442 small arms being anything from pistols to assault rifles, 44,275 night vision devices, 5,235 Humvees, which we saw earlier, 617 MRAPs, which were the mine-resistant ambush-protected vehicles, and 616 aircraft. So each of these are used by mostly big city police forces and their SWAT teams. But also many just local police forces have a large amount of these vehicles and stuff that they use. They drive them around. It's terrible for the environment. It's terrible for the roads. The Texas law enforcement has 75 MRAPs. 75. The National Guard of Texas has 6. The National Guard being the ones who patrol the border, the ones who are in charge of natural disasters, the ones who are called in extreme emergencies, the ones who are our internal military. Also, with the increase of these strong and intense vehicles and arms that the police have access to, many SWAT teams have taken to just increased raids. There has been an increase in some cities of over 2,000% from the 1960s in the use of SWAT raids. for even just minor drug cases. There have been, and many of which don't turn out to prove anything, a lot of which they can't find anything. In Detroit in 2011, I believe, there was a SWAT raid on a minor drug dealer's house where 2 of his kids were detained and held down under gunpoint by a SWAT team. These kids being 9 and 11, not knowing what their father would have done. This SWAT raid did actually find something. However, there was the use of concussion grenades, which did cause children physical harm. Another example of this is when concussion grenades were thrown through a window, and it landed next to the face of an infant of a suspected drug user, and it mortally wounded the infant. And the mother was there, but it wasn't allowed near the infant until the emergency vehicles arrived, as it wasn't protocol and wasn't allowed. That raid actually turned out nothing. It turned out negative. This child died for a hunch, essentially, on someone who uses drugs and never even committed a violent crime. This was all cited by Senator McCaskill. She's the senator of Missouri, one of them, and is very anti-police militarization. So the equipment may also help in prevention of terrorism if foreign countries see that even just our regular police forces are running around with these things. That may mean that they will be scared, like they have a more likelihood of failure, and especially with increased searchings in general, that they may be found out. However, this has also made the amount of military equipment and strong force of equipment has reduced police accountability. Many police departments have had fatal shootings where it wasn't known if the person who died was actually trying to assault the police officer or not, or if it just happened. Many of these cases are investigated by the friends and co-workers of the police officer who may have shot them. So they're subject to the bias of, this is my friend, I don't want to necessarily condemn him to life in prison because he shot someone. I wouldn't want to do that. So that's why people have, many police departments have started implementing body cameras. They have started to use them to try and deter this idea that police don't have to be held accountable for their actions. A study in Denver by Barack Ariel, he is a criminologist from Cambridge and has his own criminology team. He conducted a study in Denver where he used body cameras to he divided Denver into 12 different districts, and in each district he used a different type of body camera or dashboard camera or surveillance method, and then he had 2 control districts where he didn't do anything to compare it to. And there were a lot less arrests for it in the places with the body cameras and dashboard cameras in use. As he quotes in his findings, that the odds for arrest were 18% lower than the odds under control conditions, suggesting officers become more cautious about arresting when body-worn cameras are deployed. I mean, that's a pretty self-explanatory quote. It means that for the time that the cameras were used, many of the police officers, they were just, more cautious. They knew that if something were to happen, it would be found out. And so, these cameras are likely to increase accountability, but if these cases are being investigated by their friends and coworkers, it feels like there should be something changed. So, the proposal of a new government agency that could be in charge of looking through the body cameras that the police are wearing, and them being an unbiased party that displays different forms of, like in court cases, if something were to happen, they would have the information. It would be away from police officers' hands, police officers who have sometimes broken into the evidence cells and taken evidence to try and save their friends from prison. And if that doesn't work, there's this, like, we could take away a lot of the supplies, and we could still keep it in America by giving it to the National Guard. The National Guard has the proper training, has the proper people and leadership to deal with lethal force. They have the difference of taking time to not always be out there, not always talking to the people that are only there in the worst situations where such a thing may be, or will more likely be, reasonable and understandable of the use of deadly force. So even if you are pro-Second Amendment and pro-drastic measures for terrorist prevention, try to remember the militarization and aggression following the militarization of the police has been happening way back to the Civil Rights era. A solution may be to apply body cameras, use proper training, or refurbish and repurpose the weapons for National Guard usage. And the implementation of the new government agency for the body cameras to go through and try to create this unbiased party for court cases against police officers. And local government is often looking for the people's opinions, their constituents' opinions. And if you just give them a quick call or write them a letter, they'll probably listen to you. This has happened many times. The governor of Missouri has actually been swayed a couple times. He said this, that he has been swayed a couple times by a very firmly and well-written letter. So if you put time into it and actually talk to them, they may actually change their mind about how to proceed with police militarization.
Thank you very much. So let's give him a round of applause. Okay, we pause now for a little bit of question and answer. So if you have questions, if you wait for Christoph to call upon you, I'd appreciate it.
Do you think these raids can be useful in cities that have likely terrorist threats to happen? Do you think?
Yes, I do believe they can be useful if they're. I mean, that's testimony. They have shown.
It's okay to share.
Oh,
it's okay to share your opinion if he's asking opinion wise.
Okay.
That's fine too.
All right. Yeah. No. I believe they can be useful as they do often turn out with things, but they have to be. I feel like there should be a stronger regulation for when a SWAT raid. SWAT, by the way, means special weapons and tactics. For the like houses and stuff, there should be a stronger way. Like it should be a lot harder to get a SWAT raid permit.
Do you think it's like the best way for solving the problem that you think he was talking about?
The ways I was talking about was the best ways.
Yeah.
I believe so. Yes. Katie.
Like truckers have to have like a CDL license that do like you said with those vehicles. Do they need a certain kind of license to drive those?
Yeah, they go through. They have a certain type of license, and they have usually one person who has the training. But the problem is when this is in use, there was I thought about using a video from one of my visual aids, but it had some mild swearing in it, so I didn't include it, where it actually showed the contemplation of someone driving by one of those MRAPs that the sheriff department was using, and having, thinking that now their city is, terrible, and that their city is just gone to ruin, and it's not, it's this little city of, 5,000 in, it was in Michigan, Saginaw, Michigan, and there was this tiny town, and they just had it because the government made it available to them. So I believe it creates this fear of that everything is going wrong and that it's becoming more oppressive. Jared?
With how you talked about how they split up into the 12 districts and how they had the two control, and how there was like the big difference of the control versus the other districts with body cams. Do you think it is possible with the areas that already, like, that had the lower during the test that may have already had a low amount of arrest?
Well, I looked at the numbers, and some of them actually, there was one district that actually went up with it, but that's why you have the control districts, and that's why you do it. And he did it over 6 months, and that's why you also have the more districts, because otherwise, yeah, you may get those results. But the most consistent theme and average out the median droppage was 18% of the sex. Questions over here, Chris?
What effect do you think police demilitarization would have on the crime rate in the U.S.?
On the crime rate, I believe the crime rate would probably stay the same. The crime rate is not necessarily dependent on police demilitarization, rather than policy and what is criminalized. John?
So you said that MRAP's tanks might be detrimental to the environment, but what would make them more detrimental, say, than a semi-truck?
Well, I mean, many tanks are tread vehicles. They have the chain treads, and those just tear up roads. Like the MRAP, those usually weigh approximately similar to a semi. They're these giant armored vehicles. They're a lot smaller and more compact, and they don't only go on the big roads as semis do. Semis only travel on roads meant for them, and then but like an MRAP would be just imagine an MRAP riding around Concordia. What it would do to those roads. I mean, you have the semi driving around the whole time with these giant wheels. Like, I go back to the picture. These wheels, they have very deep indentations on them, so to get the grip on everything. So it will tear up roads. It's just, I mean, concrete is stable, but also not meant for that.
Okay, we need to bring this to a close. Let's give him a round of applause. Thank you very much.